Hello, everybody, and today you're joined by me, your host here on Sasolburg Online Radio. I am Possible Knight, and I welcome everybody listening to this at this gloomy 3 a.m. night we have here in South Africa, in the Free State, especially around Sasolburg. It's a nice, gloomy, rainy night at 3 a.m. right now, and I hope you're enjoying this, those of you that are awake at this time. It's nice just being alone, enjoying the weather at this time and date. Talking about dates, today is the 6th of October, Halloween month. Unfortunately for most viewers, here in South Africa we don't actually have a Halloween. I believe it's just another normal rainy month for us. But with that said, I hope you are all doing awesomely today, and if you're not, I really hope that, well, considering it's already 3 a.m, today would be a much better day for you. But yeah, so what is Sasolburg Online Radio? Simple. Now, if you're listening to this, you're listening to a old live stream on my YouTube channel, or you just happen to be across it live right here, right now. But yeah, it's just basically a way to tell stories, listen to some soothing music, just enjoy being who you are in this moment and time. Now, for the first segment of our show, I believe you want to know some more information about me, your soothing radio host. Well, I'm no one special, to be honest. I'm just some 25-year-old guy in his home in front of his PC like everybody else at this time of night. Most of you would be gaming, most of you would be just trying to enjoy the moment, maybe doom scrolling, maybe, I don't know, thinking about how you can change your life in this day and age we live in. But that's just who I am, just some dude, just like you, just like anybody else, just trying to live life. But since we're just talking, let me lean in a little bit and tell you all a story of sorts. Now, as you all already noticed, I'm an Afrikaner. I come from South Africa. I live in the city, same as most people that might be watching this. But you see, I have a story, a bunch of stories really, that happened a few years ago in my life. And I want to tell these stories because I want to teach a few things to not just people of my own age, but people that are younger than me, people that are older than me, people that maybe just want to listen to a good story and learn some life advice from it. So, let's start where every good story starts. You see, when I was born, right, I was born to a happy family, a really happy family. We were not the richest family, we weren't the most, like, driving around in BMWs or doing all that kind of stuff type of family. We were just normal people. Now, little old Parzival, still in his cradle, remembers a certain night that went wrong in a way. Wrong how, you might guess? Well, let me tell you the memory and then tell you what actually happened. You see, little Parzival remembered playing with a toy car. That's normal for children that age, correct? Well, you see, it might have been normal for a kid, but little Parzival remembers a fight that happened that night between his mother and, at the time, he thought his dad. But that's a story for another time. So, all he remembers of said fight is this older gentleman, you could say, having a anger episode because he decided the little Parzival's toy car actually belonged to him. Now, as strange as this might sound, this is actually true. This is exactly how the memory serves and what happened. So, the whole fight between his mom and this person escalated because of a toy car. And you might think that might be reasonable for some, because you never know, it might have been a collecting, like a Hot Wheels collection or something. It might have been an expensive toy car, but in reality, not really. The real story was, well, you see, like most people my age living here, especially in this community, my dad actually divorced my mom not too late after I was born. So basically, my mom went from job to job, worked in clubs, just to make ends meet. Your typical wrong side of the tracks type of story. There are many, many more stories on that time and age, but the man she dated was actually a policeman from this memory, which is quite interesting. If I know some people, especially some older men, especially here, do have mental issues, anger issues, stuff like that. And as conservative as we are in this community, if you have those sort of issues, if something isn't right in your mind, please, for the sake of your family, go try to get some help. Try to talk to someone. I know you might feel alone, all that sort of stuff, but please, for the sake of your family, for the sake of being the good guy, a good husband, a good father, a good boyfriend even, just a good man. If you have those problems, please, I beg you, go get some help. Talk to someone. Even if it makes you feel like you're weak, just do it. Because if you don't, it will boil up and you will take it out on your family, as these next stories will show. But yeah. I won't name this person, this policeman, but as I said, I don't know if he had any mental problems or mental issues, PTSD from the job, because I know it's a hard job. But things that night, continuing the story, they did turn violent, and not in a good way. Unfortunately, I don't remember or know exactly what went down that night, but it's a very, very telling memory of what is gonna happen next in this little story we have going on. Now, After a long, hard few years, just being a child, growing up, all that sort of stuff, we go to Parzival around age 7 or 8. Now, at that time, his mom married someone. Now, he seemed like a good person, like a good guy. You know, everybody has their issues, but he seemed like a really decent sort of person. But everything went well. Like, he became you could say, a good dad. Now, at 6 or 7 years old, you go to school, you do your thing, you come home, you maybe play with some friends, that sort of stuff. You know, like any normal child that age would, but this is where everything started to kind of spiral out of control. One day when young Parzival was at his grandparents', a family dinner of some sort. Well, you see, my mom and this guy, let's name him Uncle G. Now, Uncle G, as I said, he was a good person in the first few years, you could say, like first 2 years. Good to Parzival, treated him like a child, aka me, like his own son. You would think that's wonderful, and yeah, it was, but at this family dinner of sorts, something happened. He lost his cool. Luckily, it was just a destroyed windshield of his car. You know, people in anger, you can't think straight, you can't just do stuff without, you know, thinking about it first. Yeah, cracked windshield, all that stuff. It wasn't really a violent tendency, but also not like anger issue problems or anything like that. It was just a guy that you could see everything was pressured on him, and he just lost his cool. Luckily, most of the family members didn't antagonize it. They kind of understood what was going on and tried to keep calm, and nothing really came of it, like that specific moment, but this is kind of where the spiral of sorts started, right? So, keeping that moment in mind, good. A few months pass, nothing huge happens, at least from what I can remember, because I can barely remember anything, even today. You can think mental issues I have that I will talk about later for that, but let's keep going with the story. So, the next memory I have is of waking up in the middle of the night at this home my mom and Uncle G was staying in. And this was our family home. We moved from another home because Uncle G couldn't pay his debts on that home, so basically he went bankrupt and we lost the house he owned. A lot of memories were from that house, but none of them really important, and most of them I'll talk another time about them. Yeah, So waking up in the middle of the night, 6, 7, 8, 9, around there, like that age range. Waking up to screaming. So screaming was normal in this household. Always fighting, always anger, all that sort of stuff. It was normal, normalized. Was always violent things going on, that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, little Parzival woke up. Now, in this time in the story, he also had a little sister, a toddler of sorts. Thanks to it being arguing and kind of a violent home, after, well, his mother took care for the first few years of his little sister, she kind of just stopped. No, I don't mean stopped as in, you know, she just stopped and left. No. Stopped, I mean, is she basically started not caring about things. You know, she kind of started to expect certain things. And because of that, I kind of raised my little sister from a very young age. Being young myself, and I do mean raised. I mean being there in the worst moments. I mean changing diapers. I mean feeding times. I mean helping with homework, teaching her how to spell, how to count, and I was barely even fucking 10 years old at the time. Yeah. That's just how things were. So woke up to screaming, all that type of stuff. My mom was pregnant with my little brother, arguing going on. Then suddenly I hear a car engine come to life and rev, and you know that rev some people do when they're behind the wheel, like they are pissed off. You could actually feel it and hear it, the way they, you know, just try to drive out the driveway or whatever. So I hear the car engine, I hear it rev aggressively, I just hear screaming, and then hear it peel out the driveway. I'm still laying in bed, I don't know what's going on, and I just hear drywall. Then silence. Not anything stirs. Absolute silence. So, because I don't know, I was maybe a dumb kid, or I always thought better, try to be a better, or out of instinct, or whatever you want to call it. I stand up from my bed, I look into the hallway, and nothing. Everything was pitch black. I walk to the living room, and I turn on the living room lights. Remember, I'm still young. I'm, you know, I maybe couldn't even think for myself at the time, much less understand what's going on. But I remember this next part vividly. So I turn on the lights, and I basically see a glass coffee table, broken, glass scattered everywhere, little wooden bird ornaments people usually have on coffee tables, scattered on the ground next to the glass. And what I see on them kinda made this memory stick with me in a way, like many did. Now, you kinda already see where this is going. A violent home, broken coffee table, middle of the night, glass and ornaments scattered everywhere. Yeah. So if I take a moment to myself to just try and compose myself, because these are hard memories to talk about. But yeah, as I look at this ornament on the gown, I see blood pooled around it and on it. Not the kind of blood you get from a normal cut. No. Kind of thick, gooey blood you almost would see in movies and things like that. And I remember looking at it, staring at it, my mind going to blood, knowing what it is and what it means. And I decided to ignore it. So I go to the coffee table and I start picking up shards of glass. Now, they weren't tempered glass, they were plain glass, the kind of glass that breaks off in chunks with sharp edges. And at this time, because my mom was so distant, I was always the one that kind of cleaned everything. You know, when I say cleaned, I don't mean chores. I mean forced to do things that were necessary to keep the house in order, and was punished when they weren't done. So mostly it was cleaning, cooking, taking care of my little sister, all that kind of stuff. And I remember picking up the glass, right? I was picking up this glass, and I was picking it up because, one, I know I would be punished for the room being in such state, even if I didn't cause it. And another thing is, I know my mom was pregnant. Even at this time, I sort of knew what that meant. And out of, I guess, kindness, for lack of a better word, I went and started picking up this glass. And as it's plain glass, it's sharp, so it started to cut my hands. But even when it hurt, even when I cried because of the pain, I didn't stop. I just continued cleaning up these broken pieces of glass in the middle of the night with no one around, parents being who knows where, trying just to do what I was told to. And the glass shards cut my hands over and over and over as I pick up every last shard, even the smallest ones, and place them all in a trash bin. So after that's done, my sister, being woke up from the commotion, comes into the hallway and stands by the door. As I was looking around trying to figure out how to clean the rest of the room, she kind of startled me, so I turned around and looked at her. She said to me, "Oswald, I'm scared. What's happening?" And I bow down to her on her level. I hold her hands, my hand still bleeding, and I tell her there's nothing to worry about. That the glass just broke when a coffee mug was placed on it. You know, the kind of lies a big a big brother tells to a young little sister so she doesn't panic or, remembers, if you want to put it that way. So I help her back to bed, I tuck her in, I tell her everything is fine, she doesn't need to worry. Tell her a little bedtime story, helping her sleep, that sort of stuff. Once she was asleep, I walked back to the living room and I took some fabric, just some random scrap fabric that I had laying around, and I covered my hands in it to stop the bleeding and, try to just survive, I guess. I don't know. Fuck. Anyway, so I do that, and I started grabbing the mop, a bucket of water, started cleaning up all the blood, wiped down the statues, placed them on another counter we had in the living room, and after I cleaned everything as properly as I could back then, I went to bed. I woke up alone the next morning, and I walk into the living room. The only person I see there is my mom. She was sitting down, arms crossed, like she was angry, but also waiting for something to happen. As I go into the kitchen to make myself some cereal to have something to eat, she just started snapping at me, and she said stuff like, "Why did you clean the living room? Why didn't you use bleach for the blood? Why this? Why that?" Like she always was. And now looking back on it, and back on a few of the stories I will tell in this little radio show video, a lot of it wasn't right. Like, it wasn't how I was supposed to grow up. Now, even when things are hard, you usually grow up in a okay environment. You know what I mean? Like, it might not be the perfect family place you would have in movies and things like that, but it wouldn't be my kind of past, my kind of memories, if that makes sense. Like, sure, things might be bad, you might be poor, you might be rich, whatever. Like, whatever happens, but you should still have loving parents that brought you into this world, that did their best to take care of you, that did their best to help you get a future. Even in the worst positions ever. But that never happened with me. It was stories like this, waking up in the middle of the night, cleaning glass with your bare hands, not getting a thank you, not getting a, "Oh, you need to go to the doctor because your hands are bleeding and you have deep cuts. And you need to, have medical help for that." No. Best I got is a screaming mom, arms crossed. "Why didn't you use bleach for the blood?" And that says a lot, doesn't it? And then people wonder why most kids are gangsters. are stealing, are violent, you don't have to look far. It's how we grow up, what we know. I mean, if you were that age and did the same thing, a loving parent would have said, no, you need to go to the hospital right now, they need to check you over. But as I said before, I didn't get any of that. And right now, as I'm sitting here, as I'm even looking at my hands, there are still thousands of tiny little scars, tiny little cuts. And until the day I'm old and I die, those are going to be there. They might go unnoticed, like most things do, but they'll always be there. No good deed ever goes unpunished, it seems. But yeah. Now moving on. Honestly, there are so many memories and stories to talk about. It's hard to pinpoint a few to actually talk about. You know? Okay, so let's skip forward a bit. Let's talk about high school. Now, my sister was already a bit older. She was still in primary school, same as my brother and I had another sister, my youngest sister. She was just getting ready to go into school, all that kind of stuff. High school came around. First day, I got, well, let's put it this way. If you've ever been in the bad parts of South Africa and small South African towns, especially poor towns like, well, I wouldn't say Sasolburg is poor, but you know, the bad side of small towns. You kind of know how it goes with public schools and general schools in the area. But I was bullied. I won't go into it, but I was bullied a lot in primary, a lot. I was the weak, nerdy guy everybody picked on, that sort of stuff. Coming into high school, I was always very silent for good reason. And I guess we'll get to that later as well, but sticking with the story. So, silent guy comes into school, high school the first day, gets into orientation. Every school has this, like, you know, you're the lowest of the low, you need to learn how to respect your elders, you know, basically boot camp, for lack of a better word, but yeah, like army boot camp sort of stuff. And the first day started, we get into orientation, we get into our classes, all that kind of stuff, and your first break period comes. Now, in primary school, you had 2 break periods. In high school, you had only 1. Some schools sticked with the 2 break periods, but our school sticked with 1, because it was old and traditional and all that sort of stuff. So, break period comes out, we sat in front of the school at these benches. Like, I was all alone, minding my own business. Few guys from my primary school years came into the same high school, like, that's normal for how things worked around here. When you were in primary, you kind of grow up with the people around you. It's even, like, you grow up with people around you. You go to the same schools as them, go to the same places as them, normal small town stuff. But most of those people that came over into this specific school was most of the, you could say, bullies, but really abusive guys. And as I sat there at this very period, I just suddenly hear this yelling like a few feet away from me. And most of you, if you've been in this situation before, as I believe many have, you kind of know the tricks of the trade, like how does things escalate and stuff. Now I look over and I see one or two of the bullies. We were all in the same class from my primary school days. I see them and I see this guy next to them screaming at me. At first I didn't notice what he said, but you could see how those guys were, you know, egging him on in a way, like pushing him to do stuff to fit in, that sort of stuff. So he comes over to me and I immediately stand up because I know this is a very dangerous situation you can be in. Especially at high school first day, you know, guys with too many hormones trying to show I'm the top dog here, that sort of stuff. And he walks over to me, I stand up, making sure to be ready to defend myself if things go south. And he starts talking to me and grabs my shirt. That's already, if we want to go into law and stuff, not that it matters at fucking all, but that is classified as assault here in South Africa. Assault is any touching, any pushing, any hitting, any even small poke that wasn't consensual. Meaning if I didn't consent to you touching me in any way, that is classified as assault in a court of law. You could make the argument of, let's say, your friend pokes you and you didn't consent to that. You can take him to court because, technically speaking, he did assault you. And you would be totally correct in doing that. Anyway, so he comes to me and grabs my shirt, starts trying to push me, trying to show he's stronger than me, the typical intimidation tactics. And he says, "What did you say about my mom, huh? What did you say about her? You called her this and that and this." And I never said anything. Hell, for the most of that day, I barely said 5 words even. And why would I, a silent nobody that's trying to blend in and not get into trouble because I already had a massive record behind my name, thanks to those types of bullies and their lying from primary school and stuff, because they lied about a lot of situations, making me a instigator, and teachers didn't do their jobs, you know what teachers get. And they always stood behind the 5 kids telling them one story behind the one silent kid. You know, always believing the majority of people over the single one that's actually telling the truth of what happened. So I was always made out to be a liar, yada yada yada. Because of that and a lot of situations I didn't want to be in, I got a massive file of like 500-600 pages of just incident report after incident report after incident report. Just this crazily thick file to my name. And so they come, so this guy came over, yada yada yada. Silent kid didn't say anything, so he keeps pushing and he keeps grabbing. I stayed silent, like I always do in situations like this. Like, I'm not testing, I'm just not being defensive, I'm just being calm, you know? Just not interacting, not pushing anything, not saying anything. Almost, you could say fearful, but I wasn't fearful, I was just unmoving, you know? And he keeps going, "My mom, you said this about my mom, and you said that about my mom," pushing, shoving, grabbing, holding, all that sort of stuff. And sorry for my translation and stuff, because most of it, all these stories are in Afrikaans, so I'm translating them into English as best as I can. So the two bullies says behind this guy that's pushing, shoving me, "Hey, you said this and that about your mom, you should go, you should beat him up, you know, teach him a lesson." And you could see this guy having this smile, you know, the, sorry for lack of better words, but "I'm gonna fuck you up" smile. That little smirk they always get. And he shoots his first shot. Hits me square in the nose, breaks my nose. As he did that, little did they know, I actually had some self-defense training and have been in fights for a very, very long time. So his first hit breaks my nose. First of all, that's intent. So intent of bodily harm, assault. And that already, just because my nose was broken, and a broken nose can actually kill you if it was broken in the right way, which mine was almost broken in the right way. So that gave me ample deniability to defend myself. And I did. I dropped down and I uppercut him with a lot of force. And I won't joke, it was excessive force. Even for me being weak, skinny, nerdy type of guy. So he lands on his back. And everything transpired quickly. A few friendly guys that I know, really good guys, came to my aid, helped me into the front office of the school, where there was medical aid, all that sort of stuff, and the bullies kind of dragged this guy that was now laying on his back into the same office. So we went into the office, teachers said what happened, the people tried explaining to them, you know, just witness reports and stuff. So we sat there in this little front office, behind the front counter, barely a few feet from each other. Like, after the fight, after both of us landed one hit, we were barely a few feet from each other. But this guy was suddenly dead silent. Like, not talking, not moving, not crying, nothing. Just sat there with an ice pack against his jaw. And that was it. Not one single word out of this guy. Teachers came to me in my aid. They wanted to re-break my nose back into place. But most of the male PT teachers and sports coaches and stuff said that's not a good idea. The female teacher wanted to call like proper paramedics and stuff, and unfortunately they could not, because it was weird. Like, the laws and stuff, the way protocol works at schools, at certain schools and stuff, is really weird and really detrimental in some way. Yeah. So instead, she goes off, calls Uncle G and my mom. Now, my mom and Uncle G were busy at work, So they came down, and if you don't know, since I haven't said it before, but Uncle G is a very, very intimidating man. The type of guy, how can I even say this? Like, he just looks intimidating, angry. Like, if you see this guy walking down the street toward you, you would run. No matter if you're a bodybuilder, a fighter, whatever. Just that type of presence of a guy. And he was dead silent as well. So he and my mom walks in. My mom says, yeah, we're here for him, pointing at me. And the teachers wanted them to fill out some forms saying I'm not in the school's custody anymore because of this incident that happened, and I've been turned over to my guardians, my parents. So they sign, do all that sort of stuff, and just about when we were about to walk out, right, in front of the male teachers, and the male teachers as sports coaches, they weren't small, they were big guys, and they were kind as possible. Like, they were the kindest people you would ever meet, the most caring people you would ever meet. Not the sports coaches from like movies and stuff. No, they would go out. They were these type of people. They would go out to the baddest parts of town just to make sure one of their kids they taught and coached when busy doing drugs, that they were doing okay. Like, they were wonderful fucking people. But yeah, so Uncle G, he looks down at me in front of all these sports coaches, in front of the female teachers, and he says this. I'm gonna translate it word for you. He says, I wish you had 2 noses so I can break the other one. In that moment, the sports teachers stared right at him, the male teachers, the sports coaches and stuff. They stared right at him, speechless. Female teachers looked around confused, like they wanted to make sure they heard that correctly. And in that silence, my Uncle G, he looks at me, like, he gives me this look, right? Out of anger, like, he always had this kind of special look for me. When that look tells you, oh, when we're gonna get at home, you're gonna get it, you know? You're gonna wish you never did this, you know? And we go home, and I don't remember much of what happened after. I guess that's a good thing. But I do remember when I came back to school, like a day or so afterwards, nose still broken, still needing to go to the doctor at school the next day. You know, not in hospital, not awaiting surgery, not getting medical help. Just at school the next day, still in pain, no meds to help mitigate it, nothing. And there's one of the people that helped me go to the office and stuff because I was unable to breathe at that moment. They came up to me later on, we became good friends, all that sort of stuff, but yeah, they came to me and said, hey, you know that guy you fought? Yeah, we just learned from our parents you broke his jaw and cracked his skull. And some guys would feel good about that, you know. You defended yourself, you proved you were strong, you proved no one's gonna step over you, but no. I felt sad. I felt, how can I even say this? It actually hurt in my chest knowing that I had to hurt someone in that way. I know I was defending myself, but I still couldn't feel good about it, you know, because he was just another dude. And yeah. So a few days passed, and finally, I get to a doctor. A normal doctor's appointment, not even emergency room, nothing, just a normal waiting for 1 to 2 hours doctor's appointment. We get in, they take x-rays. X-rays are done. The doctor says, no, I'm gonna need surgery. But the surgery is expensive, and as I said before, I come from a poor family. We don't have insurance, we can't pay that sort of stuff, so I guess that's that, you know? The x-rays show 2 very concerning things. First of all was the way my nose broke. My nose broke in line with my skull, and it pressed down and upwards, sliding beneath the normal bone of my nose, which is extremely dangerous because bone shards, and yeah, there were about 3 very sharp bone shards, could slide through my sinuses into my brain area or my eye area, if that makes sense. And if that happens, I could go blind or I could die because of it. But poor family, can't take the operation, yada yada yada. So I have to live with it. After time, it did heal, but even today, I basically got a free nose job in a way. Like, I'm not disfigured. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell that I broke my nose unless you actually placed your finger on my nose and actually feel where it broke. Because the way the bone grew back is, instead of pushing together like a normal bone break, making one continuous bone, that bone that broke off actually slid beneath my normal nose bone, like I said, and they grew on top, like my normal nose bone grew on top of this broken bone. So there's this like ridge of sorts you could feel. And the bone shards and stuff like that still in my nose, even till this day. So yeah. So I don't know if they moved over the years, if they mended or what happened to those, but they're still somewhere in my body, still somewhere in my skull. Yeah, this just shows you like the situation from my perspective, like where I came from, the types of stories I have. And yeah, you would say that sounds normal. Some of you would say, ah, please man, go home with those sorts of stories, they're boring. But that's how it was. And you can already start to see a sort of pattern emerge, and then it comes to this. Now later, after tons of fights, after tons of memories, after building my own family out of friends and people I really helped get out of drugs, get out of like bad situations, I'm around 16 now. And I have more than a chip on my shoulder. Like, if you talk to me, I would talk back to you back then. Like, I was a veteran. Like, nothing could faze me. Like, I've seen it all, done it all. Been in bad situations for every day up to that point. And this is going to be a very, very graphic story. So, caution. First of all, I know YouTube's terms of service and stuff, but this is a story that has to be told. I'm not making any money off this anyway, so I'm gonna tell it. And second, if you are a adult around my age, younger or older, and you can't handle gore or bad stories, I suggest you leave. Go watch something else after you heard the stories to this point. Go watch something else, go enjoy yourself, go relax, keep yourself gullible and innocent. Trust me, it's way better living that way than it is this kind of way. But here, please go to that. Now, what I'm gonna say next might sound like fantasy to you, but this is no fantasy. This is very real of what happened. Now, recently, when I got into the school went from my all-boys school to boys and girls, and it was a technical school, the kind of place you go to become a mechanic or engineer or welder, that sort of education. The trade schools, colleges, that sort of stuff. And to start with the story, you have to understand everything around that time and the situations were always very bad situations that got violent very quickly with mentally ill people and mentally ill youth. When I say mentally ill, I don't mean, someone with a knife singing a lullaby chasing after you in the middle of the... No. I mean stuff like PTSD, depression, insanity in some cases. I mean people that functioned normal lives with normal kids, but in certain situations they would lose their minds, and you needed to try and out-survive them. Because being who I was, doing what I did, I became target number one for a lot of these bad kind of people, right? So, being the main target of these gangs, these people, those mentally ill people, and everybody there was mentally ill or had some form of mental illness. Might it be depression, might it be self-harm, which there was a lot of, might have been stuff like suicide, all that sort of stuff, like really bad mental stuff. Everybody had it. Because if you were in that school, if you got to the age we got to back then, you didn't come out unscathed. Like, you were some form of addict to weed or cocaine or meth or this other drug we have, tech, or something. Like, you were on something, or you were deranged at best, meaning you had no morals, no values. You only liked harming someone else, being a sociopath, or you were a pure psychopath with no emotion at all. And things in that lane, like very bad situation that turned good people into broken people. So yeah, at 16, I basically led this group of survivors, you could call them. Previous child gang members, previous addicts, taking broken people and trying to make their life better as best as I possibly could in that moment. Even being at 16, being in so many worse situations than they ever were, and coming out alive, I had a lot of experience at my back. I was well respected, and I was not just a target, but a guy you went to when you needed help. That kind of person. And no matter what happened, I had your back. Like, even if it was a life or death situation, I had your back. And at 16, the day finally came when things got way too fucking dangerous, even for me. I mean, next day I might be in a ditch, kind of dangerous, if I stayed in that school. So after running away from home, after going to my grandparents and staying in school for a couple of years, at 16 the day finally came and I had to drop out. I had no choice. Reason for that being, well, you see, in Japan, they have something, a saying, if you watched anime or anything like that, you would know, a dare, which means lovesick. Now, there are many dare types. You can go into the whole anime waifu stuff, but yandere is a very important word, and I'll get to that. Because if you would, this isn't the exact meaning for it, but if you would say it, that this fits perfectly. A yandere is someone that is so lovesick or obsessed with you. They have obsessive love disorder. Now, it's a certain type of disorder that certain broken people get when they fall in love for the first time and all that sort of stuff. Well, they become obsessed to the point of hurting anyone else if they came close to you. Like, they would straight up hurt family members, sisters, brothers, you name it, even your friends, if you didn't give your full attention to them and just them. And the reason why I'm saying is because the reason why I dropped out, this goes hand in hand. There was this group of girls. Now, you would think group of girls, oh, what? They were the popular girls. They were, no, not in the school, not in the situation, not in this way of how everything was. These groups of girls were the type to claw out each other's eyes if another girl stole their pen, of all things. And I'm not joking. That's a real situation that happened that left two of them almost blind and needing to wear glasses for the rest of their life at 16. The fight happened younger than that, but at 16, that already sounds insane. But that is the type of girls I'm talking about. Now, being this figurehead of sorts, this, you could say, king of sorts, most girls wanted to have a go at me. You know, the bad girl type stuff where they get with you just to brag about it to their friends, saying they dumped you, getting respect from, you know, that sort of thing. And this girl from this group approached me. We were all in the same class. She wanted to do that to me, and at the time I had zero interest in any sort of girlfriend, any sort of love interest, right? And I basically rejected her. She did not take it well at all. She was a pure sociopath. And I'm not joking about this. And because of that, you could say her little gang, she started making with a few guys, and all of her girls group and sort of stuff were opposed to my people, my gang, from like ex-gang members and that sort of stuff, where we stood for trying to help everybody and trying to make things better for everyone. They broke people down. They gave into impulses, bad impulses they had. And one day, they always used to do this thing, right? When a new girl got into the school and got into our class, they would act all friendly, you know, trying to make friends with the new girl. And once they did that and they saw me getting likings to this person, because if you were a new girl or guy in the school, you were still a kind person, you weren't in a bad situation, all that sort of stuff. And when I took a liking to those people, because they were just good, friendly people, this group of girls and guys opposed against me, they would take those people on what they would call a girl's sleepover. Now, you would think, a girl's sleepover? Oh, that sounds fun. That doesn't sound bad at all. That doesn't sound weird at all. Oh, yeah. Normally, yeah, I would agree with you. Not here. Not here. The whole point of it was to break those people's minds down so far that they couldn't tell what is right or wrong anymore. I don't know how they did it. I didn't know what type of stuff they did, but they would break down these new girls, and I fully mean break down. Like, you wouldn't even say they were people anymore. That's how bad it got. And then weirder stuff started happening. Slowly I noticed them, because we're in the same class, like you could see stuff. I noticed bandages around their chest area. And I thought, that's weird. Why would so many girls from that group have bandages on their chest? That didn't make sense until it did. And for a lot of you, it clicked right now. It was a mark, but not just any mark. They started carving my name into their chest with a knife. And you would say, that's insane. How is that even possible? How does that even happen? How is this even a true story? But it is. It really is. And they started doing it to the new girls as well. And I kept rejecting them because they kept coming to me, trying to be my romantic interest, you know, trying to break me down, trying all this sort of manipulative stuff. And I kept, you know, ignoring it. Until this one day, school came out. I was supposed to walk home like every single day. I used to walk home alone. Not worrying about being robbed, all that sort of stuff. You know, it was normal, even in the bad part of town. And I walked this hallway. It was around 3 to 4 p.m. late in the day, and there was almost no one around. I walked past the guy's bathroom, I walked past the girl's bathroom, and as I round the corner, suddenly I'm pushed back against this wall in this shadowy hallway. And this girl is holding a knife against my neck. And not your small little pocket knife that can barely hurt you. No, a dagger. A full-on sharpened steel dagger held to my neck. And she started saying stuff like how we always meant to be together, how she's gonna marry me, how it's all meant to be. Full on yandere stuff. And I couldn't even say anything in this moment. Like, I was still taken aback about the big ass dagger against my neck. And then she asked me if I knew her name. And I normally said no, because I knew of her, yeah, sure, but I didn't know her. And she stands back, stands in front of me, arms at her side, head bowed down. And within an instant, she's laying on the floor. Her are cut and she's bleeding out. Within a second, I instantly bring into action. Instantly tried to keep pressure on her wounds. Literally kicking the knife away from her as she laid there. I placed her in my lap and tried to comfort her as best as I could. I screamed for anyone to call emergency services. No one was around. So I pulled out my phone, hand still covered in blood, as I was trying to, keep pressure on her wrists and stuff. And I call emergency services. They finally show up after a while of waiting. I didn't count the minutes because I was still concerned about, this girl bleeding out in front of me. And they finally show up, take her to hospital, and I was alone. Standing there in a hallway covered in blood, and I still had to walk home, so I did. I walked home. I came into the house. No one asked any questions like what happened or are you okay. They just said food's in the microwave. You can go to sleep if you want. We won't bother you. Like a normal day, I guess. And I go into the bathroom. My white shirt for my uniform absolutely drenched in blood. I look in the mirror for the first time in a long time, and I suddenly noticed something. I noticed that I'm not the kind kid anymore. At 16 years old, I noticed I'm not the innocent one anymore. I'm not the guy that was supposed to have a good childhood. I'm not the kind guy that helps their moms cross the road. I'm not that. I'm not normal, and I won't ever be normal. And as I look, instead, what I see is a monster. That's what I see. Because besides this story, I did some very bad stuff to a lot of people trying to survive. And I look at myself and I see this monster full of scars, full of pain, full of hate. And I look down at my hands and I see this girl's blood is still on my hand. And instead of trying to wash them off, I think to myself, this is the kind of blood you can't wash off, you know? This is the kind of blood that's gonna stay on your hands until the day you die. And whatever happens afterwards, you're gonna need to account for that. You're gonna need to explain that. No matter how good your intentions were, you're gonna need to explain yourself. And no matter what you believe in, that kind of said something, didn't it? Like, because of everything, I won't be able to be normal. I won't be able to have a child, a wife, a fancy home, a car, a good job. Because how can I? After everything, no therapist will help. There is no mental help for me. Even talking to someone, even from a bad situation, like with the things I've done, I basically walked through hell for 3 lifetimes, and I was just 16 at the time. And I will tell those stories in the future. I will go explain exactly why I'm saying that, but I could never be normal. And that's when it struck me, at that moment. And after that, I washed my hands. I walk to my room, I take off my shirt and just lay in bed. Still half in uniform with my trousers, shoes, all that still on, but I just lay in bed and I just fall asleep. Without saying any more words, without saying anything else. And I woke up the next day, and because this happened on a Friday, I believe, so Monday was the next school day, that's when I left. But yeah, so I get this text. Hey, ... That girl you helped get medical treatment, she's dead. She bled out over the weekend. The medics couldn't help her. How the fuck do you react to that? The message came from the head girl from that group that I was talking about. The one that tried to brag to her friends, all that sort of stuff. It was the main girl. It was almost... She almost laughed about it in the texts. The way her attitude was. What? Do you even have words for stuff like that? No, you don't. You just don't. But yeah. But yeah, next Monday I go to school, I hand in the paperwork and I drop out. Because I know many people would say it's not my fault. I did everything I could. That shit happens, but not here. This was because of me. and I won't allow anybody else to lose their life because of me. But yeah, I drop out. I wander around for a few years. You know, those back alley dark dens, those, you know, that sort of stuff. Back alley bars, back alley dark dens, that sort of stuff. Maybe a club here and there. And I keep wandering until I find some good people online, normal people that had normal lives, and started talking to them, and I was surprised just how bad the things were that happened to me. Yeah. That is a story for another time, like I said so many times before in this little stream we had, in this little mock radio station moment we had. For now, I personally wish you the best in your life. And just know, there might not be any mental help for me, but there are some for you. For every girl, for every guy, for every teenager, for every child, for every person from young and old. You're not alone. You have a story to tell, just like I have. You've been through some stuff, just like I have. And as bad as things still are for me, personally, they can still change. You can still have hope for the future. You can still build that future. There are people like me that care a bunch about you and your story, because that's how we survived. So please, if you have mental health problems, if you are in such a position, no matter in what other people would think about you, even if they told you that they would think about you as crazy, that's not how it is. That's not how mental health issues work. So please, if you're hearing this, if you heard my story, go get some help. Go talk to a friend. Tell him or her what's really going on. We might not have a therapist. We might not have that one family member we can talk to. But we have friends. And hell, even if you don't have friends, if you are really alone, why do you think I created this? Not just to tell my story, but to hear from you. And yeah, no matter if it's one comment or 1 million comments, I will still read your story, no matter how long it takes, and try to get in contact with you and make sure you're okay. And I do mean that. But yeah, this is your host, a wonderful, soothing Oswald Knight, coming from just outside Sasolburg in the Free State in South Africa, wishing you all the best. Signing out.